staff and operating our school department. So these are priorities that we still keep an eye on funding. When I briefed the Finance Committee chair this past week, Friday actually, at the end of the discussion, after I went through it, I just talked to the board about it. He asked me a question that was interesting. He said, "What are you worried about?" On Friday, I was worried about Super Bowl. So now that's over. I have other worries now. So, the first, obviously, this was the discussion I had, state aid, state and county charges, what they're going to be in the upcoming year. Not just in FY16, but will the governor keep our state aid and our state and county charges intact for this year? We just don't know. He hasn't said anything. He's definitively, he's talked about his commitment to communities, but there is a $750 million deficit in the state level.
His proposal was put out today, and true to what he represented, he did not touch local aid, at least at this point, but about half of his solution requires the legislature take some action, so there'll be some debate and discussion before we get to the end of that road.
And I think the key thing there is to this point, we'll see how the next few months look like for revenue. It's a pretty big deficit to address. I have faith that he's going to stay with his commitment, but FY15, FY16, the future state aid is always a concern. I'm just happy if they level fund it and don't send us backwards. The need for new revenue, the budget that I presented tonight, happy that we're able to address priorities for departments, and I think if all departments have an opportunity to speak tonight, they would go through a list of other priorities they'd like to fund, not just in FY16, but what they see over the next 5 years. I'm just not sure our revenue is going to keep up with those demands, and that's a concern. So new revenue, additional revenue is an annual concern for myself and Finance Director. Personally, I still think we'll be talking about an override at some point, whether it's for operating or capital, but definitely for capital, but possibly for operating because of the needs we have in the budgets. Unfunded liabilities. We are paying our pension liability back each year, which is terrific. As the board knows, we have $166 million unfunded liability for other post-employment benefits. We funded that a little bit each year, but nowhere near what the rating agencies would like to see us do. Part of those unfunded liabilities, again, things like the new stormwater permit that will be coming out that the DPW will be responsible for. Some of the requirements of that cost us in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm not sure we're going to get anything for that. We'll know better in the next few months. Things like new signage for traffic safety coming out from the federal government, we'll be budgeting for and need to fund. So a lot of new requirements that are coming out that cause us to spend money that we don't have, and that the federal government or the state government are not helping us fund. The use of the stabilization fund and replenishing it is a major concern of mine, probably at the top of this list. I'm concerned that each year we're spending more than we're putting back in. The stabilization fund has been very helpful to us in dealing with capital projects, capital equipment. But as we have raised our revenue in the past few years to help with budgets, the amount of free cash is going to start to diminish. When the free cash starts to diminish, we're going to have less going into the stabilization fund, continue to use the stabilization fund the way we are. I'm just afraid that we're going to bring it down to a very alarming level. So the use of the stabilization fund and how much we replenish it with is something we need to really watch in the future. Capital improvements. I was talking to each of you about the need for capital improvements. Obviously the schools have a need with elementary schools. The Director of Public Works will tell you that not only does he need improvements to his facility, but roadways and stormwater and drainage in the town and sidewalks in the town need an infusion of money more than the Chapter 90 money that we use now. We need a new center fire station. The library, police station, the outlying fire stations are all going to be in need of some type of upkeep as they go up in age. I don't think it's out of the question to say that over the next 5 years, we're going to need $100 million to address all the major improvements in the community. There's a large portion that we need in elementary schools. The Center Fire Station is going to be close to $10 million, I would think. We could probably easily spend $11 million on roadway improvements throughout the community for those who drive roads. You'd be surprised how many people call and complain about sidewalks in the community. No money going to sidewalks. And the drainage in the town has been historically terrible, so drainage improvements are a major issue. So capital improvements and how we fund those, most likely definitely debt exclusion. If we don't get a debt exclusion, any of the items I talked about, you can't do them. We just don't have the ability within our budget to do it. And then finally, the bond rating. We didn't see an increase in our bond rating this last go around. I'm hoping when we borrow for the water treatment plant, which will be a major capital improvement coming up in FY16. We see a bond rating increase, but watching the bond rating to make sure we at least maintain it, hopefully go up. Obviously helps with the interest rates when we borrow funds. I know I moved through that pretty quickly, but that's the budget presentation for FY16. Similar to what we've had in previous years, I'll correct some mistakes that were in this presentation, get this up on the website tomorrow. That is it. Again, I want to thank the department heads for doing an outstanding job with the budgets. I want to thank them even more for managing their budgets as they have in the last few years. They've had little to work with, and I've asked a lot of them as managers and as a staff, and I'm just proud of the way they manage their budgets and provide services to the community. Everything that you see in this budget truly provides service to the residents. There are no luxuries in this budget. They all provide service, important service to the residents. And I think it's a good budget. It's come a long way since the first budget I did when I became manager. I think as we have in the last few years, we're taking steps in the right direction. Hopefully we continue to do that in the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay, thank you. I have a few questions, but let me first ask if my colleagues have any questions or comments, and then I'll look to my father and see if Mr. Wentworth has any feedback.
I don't have an opportunity to talk about the budget today, so.
Okay. Mr. Gay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also had the opportunity with Mr. Johnson to talk to the town manager of the budget, and went over everything thoroughly, and I was very impressed by how he stretched as much as he could to cover as much as he could, and to address as many things as he possibly could to everything around. So I was very impressed with it.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson? I'll just make a quick comment. I actually didn't have an opportunity to review it with Richard prior, but I think the thing that I'm struck by, whenever Richard presents a budget, number one, I think it's thorough and it just gets easier and easier to read, so I thank you for that. I think the other significant thing is that as a community, I know I've seen the services improve year to year, but I'm struck by the number of things that we aren't able to fund, but still yet we're providing a high level of service. So I just want to
look to them out there.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys for what you do with what you have, because I know that it doesn't come close to touching what we need. And it's always a good time to pause. No matter how pleased I am with the clarity of the budget, I'm always surprised at the number of things that we can't get to. But I do hear a lot of positive feedback about things going on in town and the services that people are getting. So sometimes it lulls people into a false sense of security that we have a ton of money and things are great. We certainly aren't in that situation, and I just think it's worth mentioning. So.
Thank you, Scott. Mr. Penalize?
Yeah, again, thank you to the department heads for all the work that they do to be able to put forward the services that they do under this sort of budget. I'm struck by the fact that if you look at the the increase in the fixed cost for both the town and the school side, it's almost $1 million. And our overall budget only increased 2.1. And so to be able to fund any additional priorities out of that, I think is a credit to the work that they do and the town manager does. When half the budget increase is immediately eaten up by healthcare, dental, et cetera, that makes it a tough go. So thank you for all the work that you do. I see them every week, or well, now every other week at the staff meetings. And I know they are paying attention to every penny, and so we appreciate that.
Super. I have a couple questions that are kind of housekeeping, Mr. Montori, just to kind of, I want to just clarify in my own mind and maybe for some others, but can you refresh my recollection? How do you treat the Essex Agricultural and the Shawshene Tech allocations within the budget? They're not part of the school allocation, right?
What happens, Essex Ag is new. Actually, we have to appropriate funds from it last year. We used to get charged on our state and county charges. So that's new to the budget. The state asked us, all the cities and towns, to put those costs in the budget. So what happens when I determine what the new revenue for the community, the budgets are at the beginning of the budget process, immediately off the top, I take off any cost of, or any increased cost for Shawshene, Essex Aggie, and the net amount is distributed 60/40 through the council.
All right. So when I look at one of your slides, had the Essex County Technical Institute sending tuition in was 0 there, that's because of that change, is that right? It's on, in the appropriations category.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
it's now in the budget.
Yep. Okay. All right, so the next question, I think I have the answer to this, but I just want to be certain. We'll be speaking to our members of our state delegation over the next month or so at various points, and one of the priorities for our discussion with the delegation members was about the waiver that the library receives. Does the addition, and I don't believe this is the case, but does the addition of the teen librarian that you proposed impact our maintenance of effort, or is it strictly books and periodicals that come into
Books and periodicals, and the funding amount is the end of it.
So if I were to advocate that the way that we're viewed by the Board of Library Commissioners is somewhat inequitable, if we as a community are allocating another $40,000 to a teen librarian, but we see no benefit in the waiver process, that would be a consistent statement. Okay.
Yes.
All right. And then the other question that I picked up on, because of what I do every day when I'm not here, is you mentioned the property and liability insurance of 7% on the town side, 7.5%.
Yes, this is just a projection at this point.
Projection only?
Yeah, I haven't heard yet. what the
Yeah, I
increase-
was curious.
We usually don't hear what that increase is. till-
It's a little early. I'm curious because the market is softening.
Yeah.
And I would certainly encourage you and anyone involved here locally that we should really scrutinize that
Yeah.
and push that number.
If that number comes in close to a little funding, then I'll just, at some point,
Yeah.
future town meeting. we'll have
That's
that.
terrific. Okay.
And just to go back on one thing,
Yep.
when we talked to the delegation, the board needs to also stress the 911 grant fund.
Yeah.
And the legislation for that. So
I did make a note of that, and we
the
should.
libraries are reporting that that's an actual,
To our
if
list.
that is not funded, that is a major hit to our budget.
Yep. Yep. All right, and then just the only comment I want to offer, actually two comments. One is you made some observations about the stabilization fund and expressed some concern, and I certainly share that concern. And it's interesting to me that for many years that I've been involved both on the finance committee and here as a selectman, we didn't have the benefit of a stabilization fund, and we developed the pattern and the habits of getting by without one. Robbing Peter to pay Paul, using one-time revenues to balance our budget and fund our operating costs. And now that we've in my words, develop the discipline and put the plan in place that I think long-term will serve Tewksbury well. It's interesting to me